HR gets paid to protect the company from being sued. HR cannot be everywhere. It's usually just one person per location. They can't sit in every single meeting, and they can't protect you every moment that you're at work. It's physically not possible. Plus, all these problems still occur even though everyone knows HR is just a phone call away. Why? The reason is because HR is often a reactionary approach. They are there in case something happens after it's already happened. That's the beauty of EPS. We give you the true evidence you need to hold your abuser accountable. But we also provide a proactive way to protect yourself so that the odds of you being violated are practically zero. Use EPS. What happens if you actually do sue your company without the help of EPS? Well, all of the evidence, all of the investigation, all of your story, all of the other person's story, all of your fate rests in the hands of HR. Who pays their salary? Your company does. Who are you suing? The company. So you're suing the company pays their HR people, and you give all the power to the HR people? You give them control over all your evidence? That's a conflict of interest. Never forget, HR is paid by the very company you're suing. You must create a separation of power with an independent third party. Use EPS. Their hands are often tied. They may launch an investigation, but so much of what they're working with is he said, she said, or word versus word, and that rarely, if ever, works in the favor of the victim. The abuser often gets away with it because there's usually no evidence. Sure, HR within a moral company will do the best they can, but without proof, their best simply isn't good enough. You need authentic, untampered, unbiased proof. You need EPS for that. If HR was an effective solution to prevent these problems, then you wouldn't even be here. You're here because HR is not an effective solution to these problems. Use EPS. These platforms are provided by the company. Their loyalty is to their customer. Their customer is not you. Their customer is the company. Plus, these services are used on the company's terms, when the company decides. And the company controls the recording, not you. Your protection should be on your terms, when you decide you want it. And your evidence should stay in your control. These are fantastic service providers, but at their core, they are communication platforms. They wake up every day thinking, how can we help people communicate with each other more effectively? EPS, on the other hand, we wake up every day thinking, how can we help individual employees feel protected at their job? That's our sole focus. What happens if you actually do sue your company? Well, I'm sure you're trusting and hoping that your company will in fact store their recording of the event, or you're trusting and hoping they don't edit or tamper with their recording. Not so fast. Think deeper about what's happening here. Even after you've been abused, you're just going to assume your company will do the right thing? At the same time while you're suing them? Really think deeper on this. Their company reputation is on the line, and potentially millions of their dollars are on the line. And sometimes their jobs are on the line. Some of their personal reputations are on the line. Meanwhile, you're just a low-level employee at the bottom of the work pyramid, and you're just going to let them control all your evidence. Does that really make sense to you? Keep the evidence in your hands. Not to mention, managers and executives are often a lot closer to each other than you are. Meaning, the higher up the chain of command the person is, the more likely they are to be friends with the people in power. This is the old boys club mentality, like they all go golfing on the weekends together. My point is that if a low-level, bottom of the pay scale employee is abused, and especially if it's a word versus word scenario, which it almost always is, who do you think your company is going to side with? You? Or their friend who also happens to be more valuable to the company? If you still don't believe me, just remember this. Your company values your boss more than you. I know this because they pay them more than you. It's just that simple. So please understand that when things get ugly at your job, especially with people that outrank you, then it's important to realize you are valued less than they are. It's just the cold, hard truth. Now you can level the playing field. Use EPS. If your company says they'll allow you to use the Teams or WebEx app in your phone to record, but not allow you to use EPS, that's a red flag. Why? I'm willing to bet that when you set up your Teams app, you used your company email and your company information. You did, didn't you? That's a textbook conflict of interest. There's no separation of power, and all of the ownership of that recording is now right back in the hands of your company. Don't take that bait. Or if you think maybe you can create your own personal Teams or WebEx account with no affiliation to your company and record people that way, guess again. That's no different from just using your own camera app. Your company will never allow that because now you can access that recording. You can share it, tamper with it, you can do anything with that recording, and they'll never allow that, and they shouldn't. It breaks confidentiality. Only EPS secures all parties. You, your coworkers, and your company use EPS. If large-scale communication platforms were an effective solution to prevent these problems, then you wouldn't even be here. You're here because these platforms are not effective solutions to these problems. Use EPS. This is 100% out of your control. You don't have any say in whether or not you're treated right at your job. No control at all. Your job, the very way that you feed your children, is now in the hands of someone else and their word. Trust and hope are some of the most beautiful qualities in everyone's personal life. But remember, in the business world, trust and hope are the ultimate mistake. Still don't believe me? Why are business deals made with pen, paper, and even lawyers instead of just a good old-fashioned handshake? Why do most employees have to sign a bunch of paperwork before they can start their job? Why? It's because in the business world, people cannot be trusted. It may sound harsh, but it's actually true. That's the exact reasoning why everything must be agreed to in writing. The same exact logic applies to your protection at your job. Personal protection is probably the number one most important thing to you when you go to work. It's probably even more important to you than the money. And yet with the most important thing, you're just going to rely on hope and trust for your protection? Meanwhile, every document around you is being signed in writing because people can't be trusted at their word? Hope and trust are magical qualities in everyone's personal life. In your business life, there's simply no place for it. There's too much at stake. The next time you're asked to sign something at your job, just remember the reason that's happening is because they want proof that it happened. Your word is not good enough for them. Why should their word be good enough for you? And then I want you to think about EPS reminding you that the way you're treated at your job is in everyone else's hands. Don't rely purely on trust. Put the power into your hands. Use EPS. Every single victim that has ever been abused at their job, every single victim that's experienced racism, sexism, sexual harassment, false accusations, child grooming, discrimination, etc. Every single victim had hope it would not happen to them, and they relied on trust that it would not happen to them. They all had trust in other people at their job, and yet they all became victims. They thought exactly the same way that you're thinking right now. It won't happen to me. Don't be naive, be smart, use EPS. If doing nothing and relying on trust and hope was an effective solution to prevent these problems, then you wouldn't even be here. You came here because trust and hope are not effective solutions to these problems. Use EPS. They are provided by the company. They answer to their customer. Their customer is not you. Their customer is the company. Their technology is generally designed to prevent burglary and embezzlement. Their focus is on large-scale surveillance, and oftentimes they don't even have an audio component. Think of them as macro security. But with EPS, we're talking about people's ears and people's bodies. Think of us as personal security. In order to protect your ears and your body, you must have security measures that are close to your ears and your body. Some eye in the sky can't do that for you, especially if you're behind a closed door. If security cameras were an effective solution to prevent these problems, then you wouldn't even be here. You came here because security cameras are not effective solutions to these problems. Use EPS. You'll make your coworkers and company uncomfortable. It threatens company confidentiality and threatens your coworkers' comfort. This is because you have access to your own recording. You could share that recording with anyone, or you could tamper with it. This breaks company confidentiality and makes your coworkers uncomfortable too. If your coworker wanted to use their personal cell phone's camera app on you, would you feel comfortable with that? Of course not. So don't do that to them. Just use EPS. Even if somehow you're given permission to use your personal camera app to record, it's unprofessional and kind of weird. EPS makes it okay. Just use EPS. If you use your camera app, that means you'll have access to the evidence. I'm willing to bet your company has a lot more money than you do. It won't be difficult for them to hire a high-powered attorney to poke a massive hole in your case. You can be accused of tampering with the recording because you had access to it. Turns out, editing a video is actually really easy. And since you did have access to your recording, they can easily reverse accuse you of tampering with your evidence. Once that idea is planted in people's minds, you now have to prove to people that you did not tamper with your evidence. Without EPS, that's something you can't accomplish. Only EPS can provide guaranteed, authentic evidence of what really happened. If recording people with your personal cell phone was an effective solution to prevent these problems, then you wouldn't even be here. You came here because this is not a solution. It never was, and that's why you never did it before. Use EPS. Major conflicts of interest. Most of the old ways are entirely in the hands of your company. There's no separation of power. None of the old ways are in your hands. Even the personal camera app, because they won't be comfortable with that. Every single other option has an extreme conflict of interest, none of which directly and solely protect the individual employee. Only EPS can provide protection without conflict of interest. None of these options are on your terms. Other people get to decide if and when these other options are used. Only EPS gives you control over when you want to be protected. The way you're treated at your job is now in your hands. Most of these alternative options are dated technology, or they're reactionary methodologies. Only EPS has the cutting-edge, next-generation methodology. Only EPS has the unbiased, proactive approach to preventing these problems before they ever happen. If something still goes wrong at work and you become a victim, only EPS has the ability to provide you with authentic, unbiased, untampered evidence you need to hold your abuser accountable. All these other options provide questionable evidence with no separation of power. If any of these alternatives were effective, then these problems wouldn't be so common. You came to EPS because you wanted to know if there was a better way to protect yourself. You have found the better option you've been waiting for. If you agree that EPS is the best option available, then sign up today.